My name is Philip, and I am a single Omega father. My life, until this morning, was relatively peaceful, defined by the struggle to make ends meet and the joy of raising my daughter. But today, that peace was shattered when my daughter and I were effectively kidnapped by her biological father, a prime alpha she had never met. At this very moment, I was sitting on a plush, velvet sofa in a living room that was larger than my entire apartment. The space was palatial, decorated with art that probably cost more than my lifetime earnings. Sitting opposite me was a man who looked like he had walked straight out of a high-end fashion magazine, though his expression was cold enough to freeze hell over. He looked at me with an air of detached professionalism. "Mr. Philip," he began, his voice deep and resonating with authority. "I invited you here because I wish to discuss the custody of our that child. I believe it is in her best interest to be raised in an environment that can provide for her needs. My daughter, Bella, was currently sleeping in one of the guest bedrooms upstairs. The mere thought of how this man had invited us here, by having his bodyguards essentially herd us into a luxury car, made my blood boil. There is nothing to discuss," I snapped, crossing my arms over my chest. "The child is mine. Exclusively mine. Her father is dead." The alpha frowned, his thick brows knitting together. "I am not dead," he stated, his tone flat and unamused. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain a facade of politeness despite the urge to scream. "Listen, sir. I carried this child alone. I gave birth to her alone. I have raised her alone for 3 years. And now, out of the blue, you want to talk about custody? On what grounds? You are dreaming if you think I'm just going to hand her over." I glanced at his attire. He was wearing a bespoke 3-piece suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. He looked like a gentleman, but his words were brainless. Part of me, the shallow part, was internally rejoicing. At least the father of my child is handsome, I thought. It wasn't a total waste to sleep with him, but the other part of me was filled with disdain. He might be good-looking, but his brain was clearly defective if he thought he could just steal my daughter. Our history was both simple and complicated. It wasn't really a story of who took advantage of whom. 3 years ago, I had unexpectedly gone into my heat cycle just as he had suddenly entered his rut. It was a perfect storm of biology. We collided like a lightning strike hitting a wildfire and spent the entire night together. Yes, just one night. The next day, I woke up in a hospital. By the 3rd day, my uncle and his family, who I had been living with, kicked me out of the house for being a disgrace. The memory made me grind my teeth. If it weren't for Bella sleeping upstairs, and if I weren't currently surrounded by his security detail, I would have leaped across the coffee table and fought him. I wanted to punch that handsome face until he was crying on the floor, begging for mercy. However, imagination is beautiful, but reality is skeletal. I was currently too cowardly to actually challenge him physically. Standing behind the sofa were 2 bodyguards in black suits, looking like mountains of muscle. Even though they looked fierce, they were nothing compared to the alpha sitting in front of me. He was wearing a suppression collar around his neck, looking ascetic and cold, yet the room was still faintly filled with his residual alpha pheromones. The scent was a rich, spicy citrus that made my face flush against my will. The alpha, whose name I learned was Russell, spoke again. "Let me make a correction. You did not conceive the child alone. We slept together, which is how you became pregnant. Furthermore, I am prepared to offer you a substantial sum, compensation for childbirth, child support, and a fee for emotional distress." "Stop," I shouted, my face burning red. It wasn't from the pheromones this time, it was pure anger. "I am not selling my daughter. What kind of garbage are you spewing?" He frowned at my coarse language, clearly unused to being spoken to in such a way. "Very well. If we cannot agree, we will settle this in court." My heart hammered against my ribs. Panic set in. There was no doubt that Russell was powerful and wealthy. If we went to court, I would lose. I had no resources, no connections, and a bank account that hovered near zero. As the man stood up to leave, panic overrode my pride. "Wait," I yelled, my voice softening into a tone that knew its place. "Mr. Russell, please. I think we can talk about this properly. There is no need for lawyers." He paused, glancing at the expensive watch on his wrist. "I am very busy right now," he said dismissively. "We will discuss this when I return." And just like that, he walked out. He didn't just leave the room, he vanished. For the next few days, the man didn't appear at all. We were prisoners in a gilded cage. Daddy, Bella asked one evening, sitting at a dining table that was larger than my entire kitchen back home. How do you know that man? Did he abandon you? If he did, I don't want him. Bella was nearly 3 years old, and her articulation was surprisingly clear for her age. I placed a piece of tender beef onto her plate. Adult business, I told her gently. Kids shouldn't ask so many questions. Just eat your meat. Bella blinked her large, round eyes and nodded obediently. Okay, Daddy. I looked at her, really looked at her. Her eyebrows and eyes were uncannily similar to the man who had trapped us here. A headache began to throb behind my temples. My peaceful life was shattered, and it was just my rotten luck. Suddenly, Bella stood up on her chair, reaching out with a small, chubby hand to pat my head. Don't be afraid, Daddy. I will fight the bad guys with you. Hey-ya. Zap zap zap. The nanny, a kind middle-aged woman hired by Russell to watch over us, saw this and laughed nervously. She rushed over to gently lift Bella down. Careful, Miss Bella. Don't fall. Once seated, Bella announced loudly, I'm not afraid. I am a fairy. I have magic. I widened my eyes in exaggerated shock. Wow, you are so powerful. Bella covered her mouth and giggled, her watery eyes staring at me with a cuteness that melted my heart. That was the moment I decided we had to leave. I couldn't let him take her. So, I prepared to escape with Bella. It was a disaster. We tried to climb over the garden wall. I managed to get Bella over safely, but I slipped. I twisted my ankle so badly I saw stars. We were caught immediately. Now, my foot was wrapped in bandages, and I felt stupid enough to cry. Bella had been taken by the nanny to play in the nursery, leaving me alone in the living room with the alpha. Russell sat opposite me again, his face grim. His pheromones were no longer faint. They were wrapping around me like invisible silk, heavy and oppressive. It was an instinctual intimidation tactic. My own omega pheromones, the scent of sweet roses, were being drawn out against my will, tangling with his citrus scent. My face heated up, my mouth went dry, and my breathing grew shallow. Who gave you the right to lock us up? I slapped the table, though the gesture lacked force. I'm going to sue you. He didn't take my threat seriously at all. He simply continued with his own train of thought. I cannot give you custody of the child. Your recent behavior proves that you are unreliable. I stood up on one leg, hopping slightly for balance, and pointed a shaking finger at him. What nonsense are you talking about? She is my heart and soul. If you hadn't locked us up, would I have tried to climb a wall with my daughter? And for the record, I added, my voice trembling, I made sure I fell beneath her. I was her meat cushion. She didn't get a single scratch. I sat back down, deflated. I knew, deep down, that climbing the wall with a toddler was reckless. But I also knew who was truly to blame. Bandit, I muttered. You're a bandit. What did you say? Russell's sharp gaze swept over me. I instantly withered. My eyes darted away, avoiding his piercing stare. Suddenly, the stress became too much. My eyes reddened, and a lump formed in my throat. But, that's my daughter. I choked out. I have nothing else in this world. I only have her. How do you expect me to live without her? I slid off the sofa and fell to my knees, shuffling forward to wrap my arms around the man's calf. It was a pathetic move, but I was desperate. Sir, please don't take my child. I beg you. I cried messily. There weren't actually many tears falling, but the sounds of my sobbing were loud and tragic. Russell tried to shake his leg free, kicking lightly, but I held on for dear life, sitting on the floor and hugging his shin. You are so rich. I wailed loudly. Just go have another one. Why do you have to steal my daughter? You can't just take custody because you saw she was cute. Without her, I won't live. I'll die right here in front of you. Russell let out a heavy sigh. He looked over at the bodyguard standing near the door. Stone, he said coldly. Bring me a knife. Let him die. I froze. A shiver ran down my spine. I immediately let go of his leg, wiped my dry eyes, and scrambled back to the sofa. I glared at him, trying to summon some courage. Mr. Russell, if you keep this up, I really will call the police. I'm telling you, getting involved with me won't end well for you. I'm a desperate, broke man. Aside from crying, making a scene, and threatening suicide, I have plenty of tricks. Do you believe I won't use my daughter to blackmail you for the rest of your life? I'll make sure you never have a peaceful day." His expression was subtle, unreadable. "I believe you," he said, his tone serious. "But a broke man like you will never have the opportunity to see my daughter again." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I bit my lip hard, my face crumpling as real tears began to form this time. "Mr. Russell, you can't push me to my death." Russell crossed his legs, looking down at me as I sat wiping my eyes. "Mr. Philip, it is not that I look down on you. Before I came to find you, I thought long and hard about whether I really wanted to take back custody. But you are right." I looked up at him, sniffing. "You are broke," he stated matter-of-factly. "You have no resources. Your employment history is unstable. According to my investigation, you have been unemployed and lying at home for half a month." I gasped. "Hey, that makes it sound like I'm lazy. I'm not useless. I was between jobs." He glanced at me coldly. "You cannot afford Bella's future expenses. You cannot provide her with the best education or lifestyle, and I will not allow my bloodline to be left out in the wild." I struggled to stand up, my face pale. "Don't be a bully. For the past 3 years, I raised Bella to be healthy and chubby. I can give her a good life. I don't care about your money. I'm going to sue you. If we have to fight in court, then we fight. I'm not afraid." Russell stood up as well. He was a full head taller than me. He looked down, his gaze light but freezing. "Then let us go to court. I am very busy. I do not have time to argue with you." Seeing him turn to leave, panic seized me again. I lunged forward and wrapped my arms around his waist. "Wait." The sudden impact forced a burst of scent from my glands. The smell of sweet roses hit Russell, and his expression changed violently. He tilted his head, trying to hold his breath, but the floral scent drilled into his nose. He frowned, trying to pry my arms off him. "Let go." I was terrified that if he left now, he would disappear for another week while his lawyers destroyed me. I held on tighter. "No, I won't. I won't. Let go of me," he growled, suppressing his anger. He was strong. He began to peel me off him like a sticker. In a moment of sheer desperation, I let go of his waist and jumped, wrapping my arms around his neck and my legs around his waist. I clung to him like a koala. "I'm not letting go," I shouted into his ear. "Unless you let us leave today, I will cling to you wherever you go." He gritted his teeth. "Philip, I'm not afraid of threats," I yelled, tightening my grip as the bodyguard stepped forward. "Even if your goons pull me, I won't let go." In the end, Russell seemed to lose his temper, or perhaps he just gave up. He didn't have the bodyguards drag me off. Instead, he actually walked out of the room carrying me. He carried me all the way down the hall and into his home office, where he sat down at his desk to start an emergency video conference. When I appeared in the camera frame of his video meeting, hanging off his neck, silence descended upon the virtual room. The project manager, the general manager, the financial director, they all stared in stunned silence. They were looking at the back of a fluffy head and a slender back clinging to their boss. They probably thought they were witnessing a supernatural event. It wasn't until I felt the atmosphere shift that I turned my head to look at the computer screen. The executives stared at the pretty face that had suddenly appeared over their boss's shoulder, their eyes widening further. The project manager cleared his throat nervously. Boss, your camera is on." Russell looked at the risk assessment report in his hand, his voice calm. "I know." The financial director, risking death for curiosity, asked, Boss, who is this?" Russell glanced at the camera, thought for a moment, and said, "This is my child's father." My child's father. The virtual room exploded with silent shock. The boss had a child? Their multi-billionaire CEO had a child? The general manager looked like he was having a stroke. It's my turn to report. But how am I supposed to follow that?" Russell's trusted subordinates fell into a collective, awkward silence. I fell silent too. I slowly twisted my head back and buried my face into the crook of Russell's neck, wishing the floor would open up and swallow me whole. By the time Russell finished his meeting, I had fallen asleep from exhaustion. He looked at the black screen of his computer, seeing our reflection, and zoned out. His gaze fell on the top of the Omega's head resting on his chest. My hair was soft and fluffy. The scent of roses, sweet and like candy, filled his nose. My breathing was soft and even. My arms hung loosely around him. I was sleeping very obediently. In my dream, I nuzzled my head, feeling like I was lying in a warm, comfortable bed. I sniffed. What is that smell? I thought hazily. Asterisk, it smells so good. Like warm citrus. Asterisk, I didn't realize that the tip of my nose was rubbing directly against the alpha's scent gland. I inhaled deeply. It was so comfortable. It felt so good that my pores opened up and a shiver of pleasure ran through me. When Russell tried to put me down on the bed, I woke up with a start. My arms instinctively tightened around his neck again. Sleepy and confused, I whispered, "Don't take my daughter. Senior, even without money, she can suffer a little with me." Russell froze when he heard me call him Senior. He lost his balance for a second and fell forward, pressing me into the mattress. He looked at my face, flushed pink with sleep, and his eyes darkened. "Retract your pheromones," he commanded, his voice tight. I was fully awake now, but I couldn't control it. Not only could I not retract my pheromones, but it seemed Russell couldn't control his either. "You retract yours first," I gasped. I can't control mine. My pheromones were usually just average. But Russell's were different. He was a prime alpha. His pheromones were high grade and incredibly potent. It was hard not to be seduced. And then, we locked eyes. It was like a magnet snapping into place. I couldn't help it. I puckered my lips and kissed him. When our lips touched, he froze. I froze too. But my legs disobeyed my brain and wrapped around his waist again. My mind was screaming stop, but my body was screaming more. I felt a burning heat clawing at my insides, a desperate need to tangle with him completely. Oh no, I thought. I'm done for. Fortunately, Russell still had a shred of rationality left. He clamped his hand over my mouth, pulled away, and practically threw himself off the bed. I flopped back onto the mattress. Russell stood there, his hair slightly messy, his expression unreadable but his chest heaving. "Your heat cycle is approaching," he said, his voice hoarse. He frowned, then turned and walked out of the room, his footsteps slightly unsteady. I was shocked. My pheromones had that much of an effect on him. I scrambled off the bed, dragging my injured foot, and hopped after him. I lunged and hugged his leg again. "Don't go. Leave your pheromones." Russell stopped. He closed his eyes, and I could tell he was contemplating stuffing me into a box and mailing me to Antarctica. Finally, he picked me up and carried me to get an inhibitor injection. Despite the shot, for the next few days, I felt a bizarre, clingy need to be near him 24/7. I wore a suppression patch on my neck and a collar, yet I still wanted to snuggle with him. Was it because he was my child's father? Rarely. Russell didn't leave the house for several days. To be honest, we were from different worlds. The luxury of this villa, the money spent on Bella's food and clothes. These were things I had never seen before. Russell exuded nobility. Whether he was standing, sitting, or walking, eyes naturally gravitated toward him. Compared to him, I was lacking. It was painful to admit. At the dinner table, Bella looked at me, then at Russell. She whispered, "Daddy, are you going to live with this papa?" I whispered back, "We just have a small problem. Don't worry, Daddy will take you home soon." Bella nodded obediently. I only followed Daddy. I was so moved I almost cried. Russell glanced at us, his face emotionless. "Your whispering is too loud. I can hear you. Philip, you cannot take the child. If you want to leave, you can go alone. No one is stopping you." I looked at Bella. In front of the child, I didn't want to make a scene. After dinner, I limped after him to his room. "Mr. Russell, Brother Russell, my lord, please let us commoners go. I beg you." Russell sighed. "Philip, I never said I would cut off your relationship with her. I will give you the compensation you deserve. Furthermore," hearing him talk about money made my chest tight. I looked away, tears pattering onto the floor. I interrupted him, staring at my toes. "But she is my life. You have so many things already. Please don't take Bella." Russell seemed annoyed by my crying. "Philip, I will give you time to consider." I sniffed, my voice sounding nasal and thick. Then, "Can you release some pheromones for me to smell? I seriously suspect you are releasing them on purpose to seduce me." He looked into my wet eyes, his brows lowering. Finally, he released a tiny amount of the citrus scent. "You are having an allergic reaction to my pheromones." "Huh." I blinked. Russell walked to his desk. There was a sheen of sweat on his forehead, though his expression remained stoic. "Our compatibility is too high." He picked up a medical report and placed it on the desk. This is the primary reason for what happened back then. Back then? I asked. You mean the sex? He glanced at me. Yes. I picked up the report. My jaw dropped as I read the line. Pheromone compatibility, 100%. Russell took a sip of his coffee. Currently, in the entire capital, there are fewer than 10 cases of AO pairs with 100% compatibility. Perfectly matched pheromones not only cause the alpha and omega to rapidly enter rut and heat, but they also cause them to fall in love with each other during prolonged contact. I was shocked. No wonder I have such a good impression of you. I thought I just liked your face and body. I blinked rapidly, sending him a flirtatious wink. He fell silent for a moment, his eyelashes trembling. You have a good impression of me? I licked my lips, leaning over his desk, and smiling. Of course. You're handsome, you have a great body, and you're rich. Isn't it normal for me to like you? He stared at me, seemingly trying to determine if I was lying. Finally, he frowned deeply. I will not fall in love with you just because of pheromone dictation. I secretly released a little of my own scent to tease him, leaning closer until we were face to face. Am I not good looking? Russell looked at my face. He didn't answer, but I could see the reflection of my handsome self in his eyes. He definitely thought I was good looking. Am I not charming? I asked. Russell said seriously, you are not charming. Get off. I bit my lip, grabbed his hand resting on the desk, and pressed it against my cheek, rubbing against his palm like a cat. Mr. Russell, please give us a chance. If we are together, we don't have to fight for custody of baby Bella. Right. Realizing I was acting, Russell stiffened and pulled his hand back. Incorrect. It is not a fight for custody. If I wanted to, the paperwork would be done tomorrow. I am merely waiting for you to come to your senses out of humanitarianism. He left the room, leaving me alone to think. When Russell walked into the hallway, he saw a small, pink-clad girl peeking around the corner. Bella. Russell didn't have deep feelings for her yet, but she was his blood. He had thought carefully before deciding to bring her under his care. Come here, he called to her. Bella ducked back into hiding. When she peeked out again, Russell was already standing in front of her. She looked up. Wow, you are so tall. Russell crouched down. Do you want to live here? There is a big house and good food. Bella nodded, her grape-like eyes staring at him innocently. Will Daddy live here too? He might not want to live here. Bella burst into tears. What? I don't want that. I don't want to be separated from Daddy. What? I was listening by the door. Hearing Bella cry, I pushed the door open and limped over as fast as I could. I crouched down and hugged her. Don't cry, don't cry. Daddy isn't leaving. Boo-hoo-hoo. I glared at Russell. Why aren't you leaving? Do you want to torment us to death? He looked somewhat helpless. Seeing the tears in my eyes, he stood up and walked away. Bella was still crying. Daddy, I want Daddy. No separate. Wah. I was crying too. Baby, don't cry. Wah. As soon as Russell disappeared around the corner, our crying stopped abruptly. Bella said in a milky voice, Daddy, don't cry. The bad guy is gone. I wiped the tears from her face and pinched her chubby cheek. My daughter is so smart. Hee hee. What we didn't know was that Russell was standing in the small sitting room just around the corner, listening to us. He let out a breath of laughter, shaking his head. A glint of amusement flashed in his eyes, accompanied by a warmth he hadn't felt before. Bella was young. She only knew she suddenly had a father, but she feared that having a father meant losing her daddy. She was so scared she had barely eaten. Daddy, why did Father only come to find us now? Does he not like you? I picked her up and walked back to the room. Daddy and your father were an accident. Don't hate him, okay? But what should we do? I kind of hate him. He wants to chase you away and won't let us go home. Bella hugged my neck. Daddy, I won't separate from you. I patted her back gently. Don't worry. We won't separate. However, reality came crashing down when my uncle and aunt called me demanding money. I hesitated. My last job had been ruined by my cousin causing a scene. After kicking me out 3 years ago, that family had somehow come into money, bought a big house, and ignored my existence. But my cousin and uncle had learned to gamble. They lost everything and were now in debt. So, naturally, they remembered me. Asterisk, give them money? I'd have to be an idiot. Asterisk, I never knew my parents. I grew up with my grandparents. After they passed away in high school, I lived with my uncle for a little over a year. They acted like I owed them a fortune, even though I paid for my own expenses with summer jobs. That night, after putting Bella to sleep, I went to find Russell to talk about her future. But the moment I stepped into his room, I was hit by a tsunami of pheromones. It nearly triggered my heat instantly. Crap. Thankfully, I had prepared an inhibitor injection. I stabbed it into my arm, and my temperature dropped. I shook my head, feeling proud of myself. But the next second, I was yanked onto the bed. Oof. Pinned under the man, I pulled out a spray bottle of inhibitor I had hidden in my pocket and sprayed it directly into his face. PSSHHH. Russell gained clarity for a second, staring at me with dark, predatory eyes. I was scared. If we rolled in the sheets again, things would get even messier. I put my hands on his shoulders and shook him. Brother. Your rut is here. Wake up. MMPH. He covered my mouth. You're too loud. Shut up. MMPH. Okay, brother. I could feel his scorching breath. He removed his hand from my mouth and lowered his head. I sprayed him again. PSSHH. Drenched in inhibitor fluid, Russell's handsome face looked like it had been frozen in ice. His eyes were terrifying. I cowered. Just as I was about to smile apologetically, he grabbed my wrist, pinned it above my head, snatched the spray bottle, and threw it across the room. Hey, panic set in. My body went limp because Russell had begun to lick the suppression collar on my neck. Soon, the lace collar was soaked. I swallowed hard, my legs instinctively wrapping around his waist. He pulled me up, so I was leaning against the headboard. He bit the collar off. Then he bit gently on my throat. NGH. I didn't know if it was pain or pleasure. My fingers dug into his muscular shoulder blades. Between kisses, he muttered, "My grandfather wants to meet you." What? He was delirious, yet I was the one losing my mind. My dependence on the alpha was reaching a critical peak. I tilted my head back, letting him sniff my neck, tears leaking from the corners of my eyes. "I'm sorry," I heard him whisper vaguely. A temporary mark. It relieved the escalating heat between us. After the mark was placed, we lay on opposite sides of the bed, panting. It was ridiculous. He turned his back to me, trying to breathe deeply to calm himself. I felt terrible too, but seeing him acting so awkward, I moved closer and leaned against his back. "It's okay, bro," I comforted him. "We're adults. It's just a temporary mark. Think of it as brothers helping brothers." Then I saw his hand moving. Asterisko? Excuse me. Asterisk, I silently retreated. But suddenly, he flipped over, pinned me down, and grabbed my hand. "Since we are bros helping bros," he said, his face red but his voice cold, "then help me all the way." He begged me with that cold, commanding voice. In the end, I cried while I helped him out. An alpha and omega in a room together is a recipe for disaster. I don't know how I scrambled out of his room later. I was still buckling my belt at the door. The next day, I was moved to a separate isolation room. My heat could have been managed easily, provided there wasn't a 100% compatible alpha nearby. But Russell was suffering too. The servants were miserable. The unsatisfied alpha pheromones were aggressive, attacking everyone in the house regardless of gender. The family doctor had to wear a hazmat suit to give him sedatives and fled with a purple face. Russell's rut was fierce. He had a history of pheromone disorder, and being around a compatible omega for days without relief had triggered a massive explosion. Even his grandfather was alerted. Eventually, I volunteered to help him. But I had conditions. When I entered the room, Russell grabbed me instantly and bit my neck. Damn it, I thought I was tough, but my voice came out soft and weak. Tears rolled down my face. "Gently, MN," he grunted. He felt surprisingly obedient. The accident 3 years ago was actually my fault. I had dragged Russell into it. When I entered the room, Grandpa Russell told me that Russell had been in the final stages of treatment for his disorder. But a kid, which was me working a part-time job, had gone into early heat and triggered him. The intense compatibility worsened his disorder and caused him to lose memories of that night. Now, held in his arms, the memories of that night 3 years ago flooded back. I cried. He wiped away my tears. "Why are you crying?" In the pitch-black bedroom, feeling insecure, I reached out my arms. "Hug." He hugged me like a beast claiming its mate. On the third day, I limped out of the house. I packed my things and spoke to Bella, who had been grumpy about not seeing me. "Sweetie, You stay here for a few days and play with Grandpa. Daddy needs to go home to get some things. I'll be back soon, okay? Grandpa Russell, leaning on his cane, came over to coax his great-granddaughter. Bella refused at first, but eventually cried herself to sleep. I left the villa. I went home to pack Bella's clothes and toys. They weren't expensive, but she loved them. I sighed. Russell was right. I couldn't give her the best life. More importantly, I knew how pitiful a child was without parents to protect them. I bit my lip, holding back tears. Grandpa Russell had promised I could visit any time and even stay there. I sent the clothes back with the driver. I was afraid if I saw Bella again, I would regret my decision and refuse to leave. I didn't see Russell again for 3 days. I blocked my uncle's family and worked part-time during the day, crying under my blankets at night. I was currently at a comic convention for a gig. I was wearing a cosplay outfit, a short tunic that exposed my legs, which were wrapped in black lace stockings. I wore a fox ear headband and gentle makeup. Russell came to find me just as I was getting off work. A friend had lent me the outfit, so I didn't change. Russell drove. "You're recovered?" I asked, eyes bright. "Did your grandpa say anything to you?" His gaze swept over my lace-clad legs, frowned, and looked away. He answered a completely different question. "We slept together. You are covered in my scent." My face exploded in heat. Not even foundation could hide the blush. I glanced at the front seat. The driver tactfully raised the privacy partition. Russell continued, his tone lukewarm. "We slept together again. Do you have no thoughts on this?" Actually, I didn't. I hadn't lied. I really did lust after his body. The first time I saw him was on campus, years ago. I had run around a corner and slammed into a handsome alpha. It was love at first sight, or at least, lust at first sight. He was my ideal type. I shook my head. No. His face darkened. I quickly corrected myself. "Maybe a little." "In the last 3 days, Russell said. "I nodded you 20 times. Huh. I lunged at him, covering his mouth with my hand. "Shut up. What kind of shameless talk is that? There's someone driving." He frowned and pulled my hand away. "I just wanted to ask if you took the pill. I don't want you to struggle through a pregnancy alone again." I froze, then turned to look out the window. I mumbled, "You're so potent. One hit, one kill." His ears turned red, but his jaw remained tight. "I remember you." "Huh." I turned back. "At the University exchange meeting." My eyes widened. "I remember you were so small. I could hold you with one hand." When I had crashed into him back then, he had steadied me by grabbing my arms. "Are you okay?" His voice had been cold, but the concern was real. "I'm okay, Senior," I had said. "Senior." Russell murmured the word now. "I suppose so." I had already graduated. I snapped out of the memory and laughed nervously. "Actually, we're just a casual fling, right?" "Huh. Not funny," he said. We arrived at my rental apartment. It was tiny, smaller than his bathroom. When Russell sat on my sofa, his long legs looked cramped. His expensive suit made my messy, artistic apartment look like a dump. He didn't look around judgmentally. He just asked, "Do you really not want my daughter?" I glared at him. "My daughter." I ignored him and poured him water. I sat down, legs open, handing him the glass. "How could I not want her?" "But you were right. I can't give her a good life. I'm a bit of a failure." Russell drank the water. "I'm not trying to separate you, nor do I want you to lose the child. But these past years, raising Bella, you have missed too many opportunities." I looked at him in surprise. "You speak human language? I thought you were going to insult me again." He paused. "The two are not mutually exclusive." "Hey." Russell put down the glass. "If you are willing, I can provide you with a stable job. We can discuss the child later." I fingered the tassels on my skirt. "I'm a little embarrassed. It feels like I sold my body for a job." He frowned. "Can sleeping with me get you these things? Then we should try it more often." When Russell left, he stood at the door and suddenly said, "These past years, you worked hard." He closed the door. I stood there, puffing out my cheeks to hold back the sudden urge to cry. Damn it, I was actually touched. I wiped my non-existent tears and realized I was still wearing the fox costume. No wonder his eyes kept drifting. Asterisk, heh. Pure boy. Asterisk, I took the job at Russell's company. I'm practical. I needed stability. The corporate world was full of schemes, but I could play the innocent flower or the cool guy as needed. On weekends, I took Bella out to play. Russell agreed and even joined us. He would answer emails and take calls while we played. Does this annoy you? He asked once. No, I said. You're talented. Working in this noise. Bella ate her ice cream. Yay. Father is amazing. Just like Daddy. Daddy used to carry me on his back while working. Russell froze. He put down his phone and leaned into my ear. I'm sorry. My ears burned. Then, the storm hit. My uncle found me. They demanded I ask Russell for money. When I refused, they came to my company. They recorded videos, contacted media outlets, and posted edited clips online. Marketing accounts, without verifying facts, painted me as an ungrateful, blood-sucking nephew. They dug up that I was an unwed father and labeled me a shameless Omega. The internet vitriol was intense. I tried to clarify, but my comments were drowned out. My clarification video was reported and taken down. Meanwhile, my uncle gained 100,000 followers and started live streaming sales. My landlord kicked me out, calling me social scum. Russell came to find me just after I met with a lawyer. I was depressed. Forget it, I sighed. When it rains, it pours. Russell came back to my rental. I have something to tell you. My memory loss hit something. My grandfather gave you a sum of money back then. Money. I was shocked. I never saw a cent. Russell's eyes were cold. I recently found out the money never reached you. I was silent. It hurt, but I had bigger problems. Here are the bank statements, he said, handing me a file. This will help you. I moved out. Russell wanted me to live at the villa, but I refused. I rented a vacant apartment of his in the city instead. With Russell's help, we fought back. We released the evidence. The money I had sent my uncle over the years, the stolen compensation money, the discrepancy in their housing funds. Russell contacted official media outlets. The public opinion flipped overnight. My uncle's accounts were banned. He was sued for embezzlement. The dust settled. I was working from home one evening when Russell arrived carrying Bella. I cooked noodles for us. Thank you for helping with Bella, I said. Without you, this would be a mess. No need, he said. She is my daughter too. We ate in silence. Suddenly, he spoke. My parents want to meet you. I choked on a noodle. Cough. Why? No. Okay. I will tell them. We fell silent again until I smelled it. Your pheromones. I asked. Do you like me? Russell continued eating. When I presented, my parents were divorcing. I went through it alone for 3 days. My pheromones became unstable. I actually hate them. I listened. I am not taking responsibility just because of duty, he said. I remembered too late. I didn't know the person that night was you. I didn't know I had a child. I gripped my chopsticks. We've only met a few times. Actually, you don't need to take responsibility, I added. The money didn't reach me, but that's not your fault. Then I complained. But your attitude at the start was terrible. Russell looked panicked. Philip, I'm sorry. I am bad at this. I laughed. It's okay. You're just awkward. A few days later, I asked him, does Bella need to take your last name? He shook his head. No. Will she get a share of your inheritance? Yes. Do you want it? He asked me. I looked at him. He looked cold, but I knew he was warm inside. I licked my lips. Better not. One day, I asked him point blank. Are you courting me? I thought you knew, he said. Aren't you afraid it's just the pheromones? I can tell the difference, he said. Pheromones make me want to sleep with you. I can tolerate that. But my heart moving. I cannot stop that. I thought about it. That night 3 years ago, when you clung to me begging for love. I could have pushed you away. Begging for love? I scoffed. Fine. He leaned in, his gaze hot. Can I kiss you? I didn't answer. He kissed me. Asterisk first encounter. A boy fell into my arms. Like holding a bouquet of roses. Asterisk.